deeper. Take the arm around. Relax the arm at the back. And release. One more to the front. Interlace the fingers to the back of the head. Lean the elbows forward. And release. If you're feeling a lot more tension, either go for the massage or just do some rotations. And that's it for now. Thank you for joining me. Happy stretching, and don't forget to breathe.
Welcome viewers to the Early Childhood Development Talk Show. My name is Jessica Brown and I'll be moderating this discussion. Thank you for joining us. Just to give an explanation about why we're not wearing masks today, COVID-19 pandemic has left a lot of people with disabilities feeling quite isolated as they rely on reading lips and facial expressions to be able to fully communicate. So we have chosen today to not wear masks, but we are socially distancing and our studio has been fully disinfected. So, when children with disabilities benefit from early childhood development services, they are more likely to receive the support and the stimulation they need to reach their full potential. When children with a physical, intellectual, or psychosocial disability are born into poverty, their chances of benefiting from early identification, receiving support, and having the best possible chance in life are drastically reduced. Children living with disabilities can face discrimination in the form of negative attitude, lack of access to services, lack of protection, and little or no opportunity for education. Globally, data points to challenges faced by children with disabilities in terms of benefiting from ECD and distance learning solutions due to lack of access to internet, accessible software and learning materials, and this is going to deepen the gap for children and learners with disabilities, which may result in them ultimately dropping out of school. At the heart of the work of disability experts and activists is the drive to increase the engagement of children and people with disabilities at all levels of society, within families, schools, communities, and positions of decision-making. During this conversation, we'll be discussing the importance of children with disabilities benefiting from quality early childhood development services in order to ensure that children get early identification, early intervention, and support to ensure that all children have the best start in life. Before I introduce our guest, I'd like to provide you with a brief understanding of the Right Start campaign. The Ministry of Gender Equality, Poverty Eradication and Social Welfare, together with the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture and the Ministry of Health and Social Services, have instituted the Right Start National Campaign on Integrated Early Childhood Development. This national campaign seeks to raise awareness and reinforce the importance of the early years of a child's life. Under the slogan, "Make a child's first steps the right steps," the campaign seeks to promote behavior change towards the optimal development of children, improved integrated ECD policy implementation and service delivery, increase national funding for ECD, and improve the frequency and quality of the conversations about how critical these early years are, as informed by research in neuroscience. This campaign is supported by the European Union, Interteam Switzerland, and UNICEF Namibia. Let's have a look at this informative video, and when we come back, we'll say hello to our guests.
Hi, my name is Rosa. When I grow up, I want to be a doctor.
Hi, my name is Vina. When I grow up, I want to be a lawyer.
Hi, my name is Marta Davute. I'm a Namibian para-athlete. My dream was always to be part of these Para-Olympics games.
Hi, my name is Ria, and I want to become a lawyer.
We are superheroes!
Joining me today for this very important discussion about early childhood development and the Right Start campaign is Hippie van Veek, the Director of Side by Side Early Intervention Center. Welcome.
Thank you.
Rachel Philander from the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture. Welcome, Rachel. And Heide Beinhauer, the Director of the Association for Children with Language, Speech and Hearing Impairments, also known as CLASH. Welcome, Heide. So Hippie, we'll start with you. Okay. So what is meant by early identification of disabilities, and why is this so important for children with disabilities that we get in early?
Early identification is to understand the different developmental stages of children. And once we can identify the areas of concern, we can actually start to support the children as early as possible. Obviously, identifying the areas of concern doesn't just benefit the child, it actually benefits the whole family. And also not just the family, but the community as a whole. A child with a disability might not just affect the family, but the community. The parents might struggle to understand their children, which leads to keeping them out of school and not giving them the chances at life that they deserve. And I think once the parents understand the disability and they understand as early as possible what exactly is going on and how can I support my children, where can I find the help that I deserve, these children actually have a chance at a quality life. And that's what we all want for our children. It's not just breathing, it's not just living, it's quality. Absolutely. And every single family, whether we are born into poor circumstances, whether we are born into better life circumstances, we deserve to fight for our children, and we deserve the correct information at the correct time as early as possible to do exactly that.
Thank you. And I really like this emphasis on the help that the families and the children deserve.
Yes.
And also to emphasize that if the children get identified and support early on, it means that then the teachers and caregivers are also able to tailor to this child's specific needs, and then they have a better chance of education and performing throughout. So Rachel, on education, we talk about inclusive education. So what exactly do we mean by inclusive education, and how is inclusive education done well?
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, in the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture, we rely on the definition, the UNESCO definition, where we say inclusive education is a process of addressing and responding to the needs of every child. Now, how do we do that? We look at, like what Hoipi said now, that the child's needs are identified and we respond accordingly. If we do this, then we avoid them being excluded. Also, inclusive education means that every child should participate in learning, in culture, and in the community, and still nobody should be left out. Now, if we speak of the community, the cultures, that is very important. We have to look at factors that contribute to the success of inclusive education. And the most important one is collaboration. That is very important, and I think that's why we're also sitting here from different OMAS, organizations, ministries, and associations, and we support one another. We collaborate, because Ministry of Education, though we say inclusive education, it's not about education only. It's about what Hoipi said now. We look at the child, we identify the child, and then once the child is being identified, then intervention comes in. So collaboration is very important. Next is also to, for inclusive education to be effective, we need to have the support from the communities and the parents, just like what we said also now. So how does Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture address the different needs of every child? Then obviously teachers should know the child being identified, his and her needs are identified, and then we address the needs by the teaching approaches that we use. We also look at the assistive technology that the child needs. We look at assessment that benefits the child. So what I'm trying to say is that every child has a specific set of accommodations that support that child in order for the child to benefit in the end.
Wonderful. And I also understand that there's a range of different levels of support that children can get within the Ministry of Education schools, from more intense to less intensive, but also that there's additional support for children who might not have a disability but have a special need, so even gifted children or children who might have a different approach to learning that they haven't been accommodated for. So it's a much broader service than maybe just working with children with disabilities, and it's all about ensuring that the children are not isolated, they're part of the greater community.
So, it's just the two of us. Can't beat this.
Beat this?
Oh, hey.
You can't beat the Champions League,
Europa League, La Liga, Serie A,
and the Premier League.
Whole 380 matches of it. with its own dedicated Super Sport channel, my G.
Get a HD decoder, dish kit, and 1 month of DStv Compact for only 1,099 Namibian dollars.
So Heide, we know that you've also been working closely with the Ministry of Education, and you're a titan within the disability area within Namibia. So could you tell us a bit more about Clash as an organization and how it has helped to improve the lives of children with disabilities? And going on from that to ask, do we have enough qualified personnel in Namibia to be able to really provide these early identification and support services?
Since Clash has been operating in Namibia for more than 30 years, I could now take over and tell you about everything that Clash has been doing. But this is, of course, not the point here. I would like to say from the beginning that Clash has always had a specific focus on, like the name says, on children with language, speech and hearing impairments. And there a particular emphasis was put on children with hearing loss.
Okay.
So we, in that way, of course, our task is a bit almost easy because we focus on a particular niche market, and we could do, and we try to do everything needed to just make life for this group of children easier and more accessible. So we have been working in the early identification of the hearing loss. We have done mass screenings for thousands and thousands of children.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Preschool and in school over the years. We have donated the equipment that is needed to ensure that these early assessments can be done, mostly to the Ministry of Health, but also to the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
We have assisted when children needed referrals. We have brought in German ENT surgeons to do these middle ear operations to restore or at least improve hearing. And we have put a big emphasis on the work, the collaboration with parents and communities. Because like Happy said earlier, without a community awareness, without information that is given to the parents on a level that they do understand, our efforts will come to
they won't
very
stay
little.
Alive.
They will come to very little. And in everything that we have done, we have tried to involve our line ministries. Because, of course, we always feel that we are showing the right way. We are setting the good example.
And setting the standard.
We are giving a model of best practice. And, of course, then our hope has been all the time that the government can see the benefit and maybe accept it, copy it, run with it. So the biggest project, probably the biggest achievement that we have done over the years in terms of ECD was to start a preschool, a specialized preschool and daycare unit for children who are deaf.
Yes, and this is what I wanted to ask about, because it's also a very nice example of a partnership between NGO and the ministry.
In the beginning, the ECD unit, the ECD facility, was strictly private. Since 1994, Clash has been fundraising for it, has been running for it, has just found a way to start it and keep it going. Since 1994, that's also a long time. And then, of course, as we were thinking about it and how to secure its ongoing existence, this idea came to maybe move it to the Ministry of Education, and in that way also help to encourage the ministry to do what they are planning to do for a long time, extend the educational services downwards. Towards those younger children, because that's where education has to start. So that is what has happened now recently, that Clash built this early intervention center on the premises of Nice School for the Hearing Impaired. And we are in the process of working out all the modalities of cooperation and collaboration, because of course there are mindsets within the Ministry of Education that actually officially only starts with pre-primary. Those children are already 6 years old. But an ECD facility starts, as we are saying, much earlier. So what Clash has now been putting onto the premises of the Ministry of Education is dealing with young children as well. And there we have to come to terms and open this focus a little bit, which is a process.
Absolutely. And I think it's a process that we're seeing really start to move within Namibia, and great partnerships between the Ministry of Gender and Education around looking at linking ECD and pre-primary and trying to have this strong foundation for all children. But I think especially with children with disabilities, and you can really see it at your center, these children are feeling grounded from early on, they're getting the support from early on, and you really see them continue to thrive in their education setting. So then just to ask you, the second part of the question was, do we have enough qualified personnel in Namibia to provide early identification and support services?
The answer is short. Absolutely not.
Okay. So I think it's a very clear and stark answer from Heidi, and I think it's an area that in order for children to really get the best start in life, to benefit from early childhood development services, integrated services, and to go on to have a successful education career and well-being further in life, it's something that really needs to be addressed. So thank you, Heidi. I think the point is very well made. And we also were speaking about community and the role of community and how closely you have to work with communities in order to help children to access services. And I think it's a very vital point, because we know in Namibia there's a lot of myths, misconceptions, misinformation, and stigma around disabilities. So how might we go about addressing this so that we can achieve a more kind of empathetic and respectful relationship towards children with disabilities and ensuring that they get the services they need?
This community awareness really needs to be heightened.
Yes.
And in the communities you have the parents, and a parents empowerment program is what Clash has been adding to its early intervention efforts, because we realized if we don't get to the parents, particularly in the case of a deaf child, then there is just not even a communication. So the Clash Parents Empowerment Program includes information sessions, parents' meetings about educational issues. It includes weekly sign language classes for the parents, which is just so essential, right? And that is now parents and communities, is what Rachel said. You touched on the relevance of creating this awareness in teachers and educators as well. And we can take it further. We need to raise this awareness even in the health staff.
Absolutely.
Because in our experience, parents often know very well that this child has a hearing problem. So they take the child, of course, to the nearest clinic, expecting that the nurse would probably take an otoscope, that little light that you use to shine into the ear, to just check, can we see something? Is it a running ear? Is it a blocked ear? Is it an infected ear? But the nurses don't have otoscopes. And then they send the parents home with, sometimes really with a panado, but without any referral. Or if they do refer, then the sad situation is that all audiometers in the hospitals of the country seem to be broken, except the one at Windhoek Central Hospital. That's the current state of affairs. It's a very, very sad state of affairs, right?
Very.
So this awareness, how to assist a child with a special need, how to handle a child and the parents to it, this awareness really needs to be raised on very many levels.
Yeah, and I mean, even a basic screening package that includes checking the ears can be the difference between a child getting the services they need and or living a life where they're not being properly looked after and not benefiting from education and so on. So it's a very strong point you make. So, Hippie, over to you. What would you say some of the dangers that we face as a nation of not adequately funding early intervention programs for children with disabilities? I think Heide has made a very strong point around access to some of these early services and medical services and the linkages as well. But from you working with the centre in the community and often with the community that's not very well off, what have been your experiences?
I really want to talk from a personal experience because I'm a mother of a child with a severe disability. So the dangers we are really facing is if we cannot provide as a nation the adequate information that these parents need and the resources that we need, there might become a stage that the parents get detached emotionally from their children. Because you can imagine knocking on one door after the other, asking for help, begging for help. I don't understand my child's language. And the most important thing is to first talk my child's language, to be able to teach him my language, because they have a different language. Every child with a disability have a different need. And to meet that need, we need to understand the child's language, the child's way of communicating. The moment that these parents don't understand that I need to downgrade my communication or I need to upgrade my communication, they start detaching themselves, because now, as humans, we are created to either fight or flight. Now I fought. I'm tired of fighting. I don't know where to go anymore. I'm stuck in a circle of destruction and I don't know how to save my child. What happens in the end is we detach. Then we say, I don't know how to help you. I can't watch you die. Because that's the reality of most of the severe disabilities, is these children are slowly but surely dying and their parents are watching them. And it's a distraught, it's a heartbreaking circumstances to stand in. And as the director of Side by Side, this is where my passion lies, because my child has a severe disability, and if I did not have the adequate information, if I did not have the medical aid, if I did not have what I had, I wouldn't have been able to build up the information that I do have at this stage. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars reaching beyond the borders of Namibia to try and find a life for my child, to find and try and keep my hope alive, that this child has the right to live, she has the right to eat, just as you and me. If we cannot provide in the nation of Namibia that support to these mothers, we have families falling apart. We're not talking about one generation. We're talking about generations to come, because we cannot pick up the pieces.
I think it's such a strong point that you make, and especially this understanding of the strain on parents when there's a child with a disability, and especially with a severe disability. The financial strain, the emotional strain, the physical strain, even of handling a child. And I think the work that you're doing is really phenomenal, and something that I think really resonates from what you're saying and the work that you do at Side by Side is, as a parent with a child who has a disability, you really understand the needs that other parents have, and especially parents who maybe haven't had all the advantages of medical aid, of family support, and so on. So could you explain to a bit to us some of the guidance that you give to the parents of the children in your centers, using your, hands-on knowledge?
Of course, I'd love to. I can talk hours on end about Side by Side. So the most important thing from a personal perspective is information. And as I mentioned previously, the information that we found, the information that we were able to gather, gave me the hope to fight for my daughter. In the beginning, I thought, well, I just need a little bit more information to give her the ability to one day maybe walk, or one day maybe talk, or one day maybe have the normal life that everybody refers to. But then later it became a fight for her life. So suddenly the circumstances changed from having a child with possible disabilities to having a child fighting for her life. And then that moved over into now I need to fight for a quality of life. What does that even mean? If somebody tells me your daughter will probably not have a quality of life, like how do I even find the meaning to that? So I realized that giving the adequate information to these parents guides them to ask the correct questions. Now that they have the information of what is this disability that everybody's talking about, what is it to have a child with hearing impairment or a child with a physical disability? Okay, I understand my child will probably struggle to walk one day, my child will probably struggle to talk. So then I find audiologists, I find physiotherapists, and then I understand what is this group of people that will assist me to raise my child to have a quality of life. So information for me is the utmost, biggest, most important, and I cannot put any more emphasis on that. Thank you. That information is key, and we as a nation can lose our strength if we cannot provide information. I think the second thing, and that's also talking from a personal experience, is when my daughter was diagnosed 7 years back, she had to have a Mickey inserted, which is a gastric tube. And in the beginning, I didn't understand what was a gastric tube. Where does it go in? It's a hole in her stomach. How does it fit into the tummy? Now I give her milk through a pipe. Where does that milk go? What if the Mickey pulls out and it runs in between her intestines? Now, after she received the Mickey, she was crying constantly, night after night. I'm talking months on end. So every time that I see the Mickey is red, I run to the hospital. It's infected. Can you please fix it? And then the doctor says, it's normal. It should look like that. It's okay. Go home. Then you go home, and the next day you think it's infected. She's still crying. And then you run back to the hospital. And then for me, it was very important for the staff to treat me with respect, to treat me knowing that I don't have the information I need to understand. And then, lucky for me, I found people within our circle that could explain to me, this is what it looks like on the inside. We actually took the tummy, we tied it up against the wall of your child's tummy, so this tube cannot fall out, it cannot go anywhere. Your child is safe. And then for the first time in months, I slept. So it's basic, and we don't see it, and we sometimes underestimate the power of understanding of parents fighting for their children.
I absolutely agree.
We look at them and we think, well, your education is not that bright, you know. It won't make sense if we say your child has XYZ or he needs a gastric tube. But you will be surprised at the aha moment these parents will have once you give them the information they deserve.
Adequate.
Yeah, and I think both the children and the parents have the right to have the things properly explained to them in a way that they have the full picture. And I think one of the points that you made, which is so powerful, is that as parents of children with disabilities, even with children with disabilities themselves, you become mini experts. You have to learn so much about these unique areas. So really a lot of respect for you for doing that. But also I think one thing that you mentioned is this finding a community. And I think it's something that both of your organizations have done very well, is to develop a kind of community of people who are going through something similar, and having this support network and an opportunity to share experiences, share information, and provide, you know, a shoulder to each other.
And I want to add to that. I want to say that the support groups that Heide's organization is also doing, we have to remember that you have a bunch of parents that has children with cerebral palsy, for instance. Now, the one mother's child is maybe a year old or 2 years old. While in the group, there's another mother whose child is already 8 or 9 years old. Now this mom comes and says, now people can start seeing my child have a disability. How did you handle it? And this mom can say, well, I did this and this. And do you also realize that your child's tummy is maybe struggling to go? And then this mom can say, is that what's happening? I get it. That makes complete sense. And in the end, these parents become professionals within the parental aspect of life, and they can support one another because they teach with understanding. The doctors teach with knowledge, the therapists teach with knowledge, parents teach with understanding. And there's a grace, there's a sense of, I get it that you're tired, I get it that you want to run away, I know that you want to pack your bags 9 times in a day and just disappear off the planet Earth, because I'm there too, and I get it, and I understand. And I think the moment that a parent can confide in another and say, I'm so glad to hear I'm not the only one thinking that way, that gives them a sense of security and that wants them to find out. I want to know a little bit more. How did you ask the questions? How did you find the answers? Which was the doctor that supported you? Because that empowers them to fight for their children. Parents are the voices, and we need to fight for them.
And I think especially in a country like this where we don't always have as available services as we like. Parents supporting parents is so important.
Absolutely.
So I'd really like to emphasize, if you are a parent of a child with a disability, or you're worried about your child, or you are a young person living with a disability, please don't suffer in silence. Reach out. The website that we mentioned earlier is www.rightstart.com.na, but you can also access side-by-side Clash Ministry of Education, and there's a real momentum behind disability organizations working together with the UN, with the ministries, and there's a lot of information that can be found online, and we'll also share some more information after this session. So Rachel, I wanted to ask you about some of our national statistics. We see that 2/3 of persons with disabilities live in rural areas, where it's very often to receive support